I'll go ahead and kick us off. Welcome you guys to the quarterly Women Mentors March Web Mentorship Seminar. I'm gonna bring up my slides here, then kick us off. Okay. All right. Basically, what we do is we come together quarterly to gain the insights from guest speakers for the purpose of providing mentorship, taking advantage of technology. And this seminar, we're going to be speaking about seeking your history to understand your tendencies. And we have guest speakers who will tell you a little bit more about it as I progress through these charts. Okay.
Daddy, do you know where the picture is?
All right. All right. Before we go any further, I just want to let you guys know that your work is never in vain. I like to bring up metrics. Since the inception of the site in August 2014, which we started out as the Million Mentors March for Black Boys, we've reached greater than 32,000 people through our posts and indirect nuances of our thought processes that we share, and just showing positivity to Black people, answering questions, even when some folks don't even know the question needs to be answered. And a year later, we established the Million Mentors March for Girls, and that was 3 months ago. And so far, that site has reached greater than 7,000 people, and it's at about, I would say, 235 plus or minus followers so far. And it's being administered by our sisters, my wife and Amir's wife. Amir's the co-founder of this site, and also Denise Scott and Issy, a classmate of mine who's a captain in the Army right now working in D.C. All right. Our overview and agenda, each seminar we want the attendees to walk away with an understanding of the importance of mentorship and understand how they can become a mentor either through this site or through other means. And I always like to restate the mission because you never know where a person's going to pick up on our sessions when they go to our YouTube page or where they'll discover. We don't want them to be in the middle and not know what it's all about. So I like to talk about what the mission is not and also what the mission is. Last seminar we had a guest speaker, Dante Hill, who spoke about the role of male mentorship in developing Black girls and why we degrade and mistreat our women. And he's also in attendance today if you guys have questions, and his lecture can be seen at the YouTube link provided on this page. This session we'll have Jabari Jackson, a pastor in Christian ministry, and also Martise Jackson, who's also a pastor in Christian ministry, speaking on topics consistent with our overarching theme. Okay, at this point, we'll go ahead and discuss what the mission is not and give our mission statement. Rules of engagement: we don't want any vulgarity, any profanity, or hatred is permitted, and we want to respect one another. We can agree to disagree, and we can set an example. I always like having conversations, particularly with brother Jabari Jackson, because we grew up together in the Army for the most part, and we'll go at each other's throat, and nobody will get shot. It's always an intelligent disagreement, but we both learn from it. All right, so I'm quite sure some of that might come up during this session, if we're consistent with how we've always been. And so ask questions and also make comments. And before I go forward, we might have onlookers who can't actively participate. You can ask questions through Twitter at MMMBB01, and you can also ask questions directly through our email address, mmmbb01@gmail.com. And you can also hit either of these two links to ask questions, and I'll make sure that those questions get directed towards the guest speaker that you have that particular question for. Okay? All right, our mission is not. All right, it's important to declare this because lots of people, especially nowadays with all the hatred going on and everybody wants war, a lot of people like to take things out of context. So we don't want to alienate ourselves from other ethnicities because we all share the world. We don't want to alienate women because they suffer the same social injustice as us and stereotypes. We don't want to create any division. We don't want to promote any hatred. We're basically stepping forward as successful blacks to unapologetically put our children first because the things that are happening in the news, they indicate, that a lot of our children are lost. They're not being taught the social skills that they need or the work ethic required to become functional members of society. And lots of us are successful, and I feel that each of us has a blueprint, to share if you've overcome something and made it to where you are in life. Okay, our mission is to help create lasting solutions to systemic devaluation of Black lives. There's a lot of empirical evidence out there, and you guys can go do the research on your own that shows that people don't value us. And there's a lot of theories behind it, and I could share mine, but I'm a firm believer that after things like slavery end, and you are no more good to someone. In fact, they have to compete with you for resources and for jobs and positions of leadership. You become invaluable and furthermore a threat. So we can overcome some of these things through mentorship and through creating and facilitating awareness. You know, and we're not holding a march. We call it a march, figuratively, suggesting that we march into the lives of our children, because I just think it's futile to continue to march on Washington and beg people to accept us and to treat us better when we need to start culturing it into our children so that they can grow up to be productive adults. For the simple fact, I like to read Malcolm X, and I like a lot of his thought processes. You can beg all day to be free, but a man is either free or he's not. And we want to use social media to make ourselves accessible as positive blacks, because many of us are spread all over the world. Right now, we got, Brother Martise out in Germany, and Dante's in one place, and we have Brother Jabari Jackson. He's in you're in Kansas, right, Brother Jackson? Yeah, I think he is. Okay. And basically, we describe positive blacks as someone 25 years or older who has at least completed a high school equivalent, is employed, and provides sufficient support and guidance to any biological children that he or she has. And I like to, when I use that word success, or when I use any word, I like to hone in on what it means to me so that I'm communicating my thoughts and not what someone else perceives them to be. And I derived this term from Frederick Douglass's definition, which is basically defined by what a person had to overcome. So sometimes success means getting out of the bed for some people, and sometimes success means, like I have a biological brother who survived prison, and now he's working. He's a mate on a ship down in Savannah, actually, providing for himself and his family. And that guy had to overcome a lot. So, his success lines him up, by this definition, as being a person who definitely has a blueprint that can help someone. So keep that in mind when we're throwing around that word success. Our guest speakers today will be Jabari Jackson up first, and he'll be talking about the 5-point high five, a mentorship model, and then Martise Jackson, and he'll be speaking towards our theme, seeking understanding based off of our history. Because lots of us lean towards certain tendencies, and we don't even know why. So we need to continually remind our children of our history and seek our personal history, family history, because every individual has a personal history that is definitely something that should be taken into consideration as he or she approaches his day-to-day. Okay, before we move forward, I'm going to go ahead and pull up Brother Jackson's, Jabari Jackson's slide so he can take the mic. You ready, Jabari?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Let me bring you up here, and then I'll broadcast.
Good afternoon. I'm Jabari Jackson. First of all, I'll give you a little bit about myself. I am the third child of my mother. I have two older brothers and a younger sister. I'm the father of four biological children. I have my oldest son, Jabari. My second son is Judah. My third son is Carlo, and my fourth son is Max. I'm happily married to the former Miss Charlotte Brigham, and currently I reside in Kentucky, Radcliffe, Kentucky. I'm from what you would say a low income, disadvantaged environment, but I don't feel that I'm disadvantaged in any way. The purpose of what I want to discuss with you all is the purpose that I have for this discussion is to point out that we are going to start at different stations. And I want to point out 5 points, and I call it a 5-point high five because as a mentor, you have to examine yourself, and when you can't provide the mentorship, you have to be able to give a high five to someone else who can. And as we go through this model, you go to the next slide. You're welcome to chime in and talk about things. So the 3 learning objectives are to provide a framework for mentorship. And in providing a framework for mentorship, a lot of times we have a lot of folks that says, well, there's no mentors out there. And then you got to ask the second question, am I a mentor, and what makes me mentorship material? Then you have one that have a strong desire to be mentors, but they don't necessarily have a framework of how to mentor. So we want to try to provide a framework that I believe is very simple. Second objective is identify roles in the mentorship relationship. Depend on who you're mentoring and the age disparity or experience disparity, you have to look at, sometimes you're mentoring from a more of a senior to subordinate relationship. Other times you're mentoring from a brother to brother or shoulder to shoulder type of relationship. And a lot of times you're growing with the person that you're mentoring. The third objective that we'll probably get to is addressing issues in the mentorship relationship, because there are a lot of issues that you may encounter as you're trying to help someone out along the way. Go to the next slide, please. Okay, so during this lesson here, the following topics, the 5 points: ethics, education, economics, experience, and exposure. Participation is highly encouraged, and you can ask questions at any time. To give you all insight into how this mentorship model came into being, it was back in 1998. I was on Fort Hood, Texas. I was about 19 years old at the time, and I got invited to a seminar. And I heard this speaker speak, and he spoke about experience and exposure. He spoke about how as we grow in our careers, particularly as African Americans, that a lot of times the 2 things that we lack are experience and exposure. So we'll get into that, but what he was saying really was that if we have the necessary experiences, that means we learn from the things that we were exposed to, that we'll be able to grow in a way that can help us as we attain higher capacities in whatever field of study or professionalism that may be. Next slide, please. Okay, so of all the E's, I'll repeat them again: ethics, education, economics, experience, and exposure. Ethics is the most important one, because ethics will take you through any station in life. So when you examine yourself as a mentor, when I examine myself as a mentor, I say, well, what is my character and who am I? Because our ethics is our entry fee into whatever we're doing. It is the cost to be a mentor. And for the sake of discussing ethics, the 2 points I want to point out is morality, which is also can be defined as our attitude or the ability to determine right from wrong, and discipline or our behavior, learning, practicing, and conditioning behaviors that ultimately lead to self-control. So when you look at ethics, you have to say to yourself, it's like, who am I and what am I practicing on a consistent basis. One of the things I really want to address is, like, we talk about humility all the time, and you meet folks and a person will tell you, well, I'm humble, I'm humble, I'm humble, I'm humble. But in order to be humble, it is a continuous process of not emotionally attaching yourself to your ego. Um, and a way of describing it is my ego more important than my ethic? Meaning that when we're faced with a situation or circumstance, uh, do I say, well, I'm from, as we said growing up, I'm from the Poke and Bean City, and this is what I do. I am this and I am that. They don't know where I'm from. Is the ego more important than the ethic? The next thing is the attitude. And something I want folks to just think about is, can you determine a better option than the one presented to you in times of uncertainty? It goes back to knowing the difference between right from wrong. A lot of times we get into a crisis situation. One of the best experiences I could give you is a childhood experience of a situation where two young men from my neighborhood got into a car. And one of the young men decided he wanted to do a major crime, and the other young man was the driver. When the young man who was driving saw the crime, he did not have the courage to stand up and say, let's not do this. And for that, he served over 15 years in prison. These are the things that you're going to experience no matter what station you're at. You have to say, do I have the courage when I'm addressing a dilemma or in times of uncertainty to know what's right and what's wrong? The next thing is discipline. Um, and these are just some statements that I just want to point out. What you practice preaches for you. In other words, you don't have to, pontificate all day because people are watching you. They know who you are. They know what you stand for. The company that you keep, they know, well, I know Jackson does not believe in sexual innuendos. So they won't bring sexual innuendos around you. You have to practice what you preach. Another thing about discipline, you know the things you care about. I know the things I care about. I care about the Dallas Cowboys. So I know what the score is in the game. We on this line right now. I know what the score is in the game because I care about the Dallas Cowboys. So as a mentor, you have to know the things that you care about. And communicating this same subject, like, to my son, my oldest son, he's 15 years old. I have a tendency to tell him, okay, what time is basketball practice? He knows what time basketball practice is. So what time is track practice? He knows what time is track practice. What do you need for those courses and classes? He knows exactly what he needs to do to play basketball, but English class wasn't that important to him. So I asked him, hey, do you know what assignments you have in English class? No. And I was explaining to him how you know the things you care about. So as a mentor, you know the things you care about. And the last one, I have a typo there, but reputation is a routine. So a lot of times we get so concerned about our reputation, referring back to the ego, that we miss the boat that we have to routinely and consistently provide the model for behavior as we're mentoring folks going forward. Next slide, please.
Okay, yeah. Before you go forward, man,
Go ahead.
I like this, and but one thing I'm concerned with, for anybody to recognize a dilemma, or for any group of people to recognize a certain situation or scenario to be an ethical dilemma, there needs to be a code of ethics that's accepted among the group. And to you, you think that's a problem within the black community. There's no widely accepted code of ethics as far as a code of ethics in itself that's being something that's going to make us productive, successful, and functional members of society.
Yeah, man, I think that's a great question and a great comment. Um, so as we look for a code of ethics, we have to say first we have to look at ourselves. It's like, okay, what's my code of ethics? And I'm glad you brought this up.
Yeah.
As mentors, I'm gonna tell you, the worst mentor is a mentor that has a lot of excuses. And, and when I say that, it's like, okay, I'm gonna be your mentor, and I'm a married man, but I don't want you to do what I'm doing now.
Oh yeah.
I don't want you to do what I'm doing, but so there are a lot of prescribed ways. You know, me being a Christian, I would just be straight up honest and frank with you that you know my code of ethic is to love my neighbor, meaning I want what's best for my neighbor. And a lot of times, what's best for my neighbor is not something that they want to hear. It's not something that they like to hear. The basic things of knowing right from wrong, and certain things are right. So the law system does not measure what's right and what's wrong. I think so. That's something I will tell you. The law system does not measure what's right and what's wrong. The law system, to me, is the penalties associated with conforming or not conforming. But there are penalties that we are unaware of that are associated with conforming to having a code of ethics and values. As a father, I impart those things to my son, and as an uncle, I impart it to my nieces and my nephews. So, to me, a good code of ethics is something that is comprehensive, that covers uh, physical actions as well as verbal responses and a productive approach to satisfying conflicts. I hope that answered your
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, it does answer the question. And I'm still confused, not by your answer, but with ourselves. And when I say that, I'm including all of us in the black community. Like for instance, this "I'm not gonna snitch" stuff. When somebody just killed somebody, now that's an ethical dilemma to me. And I think that dilemma is not 100% on us. It's also based on some of the media's ways of portraying police officers. There's a lot of resentment, a lot of fear, and hatred towards cops nowadays. And why should I help you? You know what I mean? So you can catch this guy and beat the crap out of him when he was doing nothing but, trying to feed himself, and in the process, somebody got shot. You know, so that code of ethics thing is
So
something that I think we need to really look closely at.
I would like to make a comment on that. Right. That's another interesting thing. So a snitch. Let's define what a snitch is. So a snitch is one who was a part of the crime, who was a willing participant into whatever, whether it was illegal or unethical or moral activity that was going on. The snitch is a willing participant who got caught or got pressure, who was a participant in the action and got caught. A witness is someone who just so happened to be there. One of the difficulties in the African American community is, I would go back to that ego. And that reputation for being something is that we have a tendency to to not display courage in those situations. I will tell you what I'm talking about right now is very unpopular. One of the cases that I'm intimate with is that I had a childhood friend. We grew up together. We played baseball together. We spent the night over each other's houses. We had a guy that falsely accused him of murder. He did a life sentence. I want to say he did about 16 years in prison, and he got exonerated about 2 years ago. And with a false witness saying that he had done something, because the guy who actually did it was more feared than he was. So the question that you ask is a very serious one, but we have a tendency to promote folks that are unsavory characters, and that's what we tend to do in our culture.
Yeah, and I think that stems towards, I just said earlier there is no code of ethics, but there is one. It's an unspoken code that says things like, I'm not going to snitch, or, I'm not going to do this, or I'm not going to do this, but I will do that, and a lot of our codes, and there are multiple items within our code, unspoken code of ethics that contradict one another, and a lot of us like to say, we're powerless, we can't do anything. My neighborhood is dangerous, and I'm powerless to change it, but you can, if we take a look at our code of ethics and tweak those things so that they create positive outcomes. Because if you do provide information, then a cop can potentially assist in cleaning up your community so that your kids can play outside, so that the drug dealer isn't on the corner, you know, those types of deals.
Yeah, one of the interesting things, growing up where I grew up, I learned that all the drug dealers weren't necessarily, bad people.
Yeah,
And I also learned that one of the things that we really got when we talk about ethics is we have to know what temperance is. How much is enough? How much is too much? What are my boundaries? Um, when I steal, why do I steal from the lady down the street who I see with the bag every day going to work? You look at crimes in our community, they are normally within the community. The person who did the crime is in the community. The person who robbed the person or stuck the person up, they know each other. So the drug dealer is a problem as well, but I think it's more of an internal thing, how we bring up our kids that merchandise and product is so important to us that we'll do anything for it.
absolutely. And I think that also coincides with that unspoken code of ethics. And what we need to pay attention to is that what we are doing when we do those kind of things is facilitating ignorance and creating want, desire. Ignorance and want is a bad thing. When I want things, but I don't have the knowledge to get them in a legal way, that's a dangerous thing. Then I resort to robbing and stealing and selling drugs, to gain the money that I need because I don't know any other way of getting the things that I want. And when I walk out my door, I see these guys with it, and I immediately see how they're doing it. So I jump on board with that without doing any further research on my own. So that code of ethics is really powerful, and I don't want to hang you up too much in your brief. So if
Yeah.
you're ready to go forward, let me know.
Yeah, that's a perfect transition point. If you can go to the next slide, uh, particularly when you're having that dialogue, education and economics, they determine or defer a dream or a destiny. When we're looking at things like resources, these two things help us to identify what is my economic potential in this area? Um, I quoted some very, us church folks are very used to these expressions, education and all that get an understanding. And in economics is money answers all things because it does. A lot of times we have a tendency to be like money don't mean nothing, but it does. Or we have a tendency to devalue being able to read, write, interpret the English language, and have the facility to do simple to complex math because we need all of those skills as we move forward. Um, but to build on what we were just speaking about, sometimes we have to realize how much education can one get and how much education can one afford. And when I say that, it's like, so for me, being a college graduate, my mother and father were not college graduates. So in order to provide a way for me to go to college, they couldn't pay for me to go to college. I wasn't necessarily the role model student as well. So from my position, I had to do some different things in order to attain a college degree. So as we're mentoring people forward, we can't just say, hey, go to school. It's going to all be good. We can't just say, oh, get you a trade and it's going to all be good because
Absolutely, 'cause then we're part of the problem. We facilitate more ignorance and want. Now you want to be educated, but you don't know how.
and you hit that on the head, which goes back to your ethics, which goes back to your ethics. Some folks, they want to have the highest score on the test. In order to get the highest score on the test, you might have to study a little harder and go a little farther. But some folks choose what they think, what seems to be an easy route by, hey, let me, borrow so and so's paper, or let me borrow so and so's answer. Let me peek over so I can make sure that I'm getting ahead. And that has a tendency to hurt you in the long run.
Yeah,
Social promotion in certain areas is a ordeal that as a community that we're dealing with. Were you getting ready to say something?
no, I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything.
Okay. So with and let me highlight education a little bit. So it's skills. A couple of questions you got to ask yourself is what can I do? Is my skill a unique skill? Is it a critical skill? And it's funny how a unique skill will turn into a not so unique skill in the future. How a critical skill a lot of times won't necessarily be a critical skill. Certification and degrees. Do I qualify to compete in this environment? So you might, one of the things in the folklore of our community is, well, he's good with his hands. Some of the best people with their hands aren't certified, and we call them what, the shade tree mechanic or the shade tree electrician. So as we're investing into these children, or even a male that may have had some setbacks, we have to say, okay, how can I provide the certification, which is going to cost you some money. It goes to that next question: am I legal?
Yeah,
So you could, I know a lot of folks that can do a lot of things, but we have to do what we can to support them as far as making sure they have the proper certification.
absolutely. You there? You there, Brother Jackson?
Yes, I am. Hold on for a
Okay.
second.
It sounded like you went out for a second.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, and this is very interesting dialogue that you're having. And it's lots of things that so many of us take for granted. Like you said, trading papers or writing off our skills to be just what they are, something I can use underneath a tree. And to me, that speaks to a lack of understanding of the value of intellectual property, and your skills sometimes are your intellectual property. And also, like you said, a paper or something in school, if someone else wrote it, it's their intellectual property, and it's plagiarism, it's stealing. And it's because we put our value system on material items versus our thoughts, you know. And that's another area in our unspoken code of ethics that needs to be recultured, redesigned, because our thoughts are our most valuable things. When you look at the way some people think poor, versus someone who thinks wealthy. Some people think, oh my God, if I lose my car, if I lose my house, I have nothing. But a man who thinks, or a woman who thinks wealthy, realizes that my thoughts are what got me those cars, that house, that bank account. So they can take that stuff, but within no time at all, I'll have it back. So we need to learn to value our thoughts and our intellectual property a lot more better, and to respect others as well.
Wow, brother, that's a that's a very powerful statement. Um, and I'm just going to piggyback. We need to think healthy.
Yes,
We need to think healthy.
think wealthy and think healthy.
Yes, because there is a balance between the two. There is it's a balance between the two, which goes back into the ethics. One of the things I really want to highlight on is like education, like how education has to be funded by something. You know,
Yes,
it has to be funded. We can't just say, "Well, I want you to be educated." It has to be funded. And one of the things that we have to be aware of are the resources that are available to us.
absolutely.
Uh, One case in point. So I'm new to Kentucky, and so I have a high school teenager. So as a father, you're always mentoring your sons. And one of the discussions I had with him was they have a Keys program. It's called the Keys program. It's the Kentucky High School Education Incentive. And basically what it does is for a kid that graduates from high school in Kentucky, they will offer up to $2,500 a semester to support their education as they move forward, based off of their scores on the ACT and SAT and the amount of A's that they make. So no matter what it is, when we're mentoring folks, we have to get out there and find out what resources are available to them, which goes to that second point on the economics, because money is relative. You
Absolutely,
know,
man. And with that said, I want to, give a call to the community, everybody who participates in the Million Mentors for Black Girls or Black Boys sites. No one knows everything. Only a fool thinks he knows everything. Typically, I share what I know as far as resources for education go. But if you know things, send them to us or post it to our site yourself. Because we're reaching people, and like we said, close to 40,000 already, and we want to give them something that they can chew on. Something that's of substance.
yeah. And the last point I want to hit on this slide is manage your money properly. One of the things that so being a company commander and having young soldiers, they get these checks, they get checkbooks, and they get all of that stuff, and then they've left their home and they have the heartstrings being tugged. Hey, I need to borrow X amount of dollars. I need to borrow this, and I need to borrow that. Um, One of the things you got to look at is you have to be able to sustain yourself before you can sustain someone else. And a
Absolutely.
lot of times, in learning to sustain yourself, you got to learn how to. If you are a person that don't have a whole lot of economic resources, you need something called a budget,
Absolutely.
and that's going to take. I'm going back to the ethics thing. That's going to take discipline. It's very difficult to not be able to go buy those new sneakers or buy the top of the line car because you're trying to establish something for yourself and for your future.
Absolutely, man. Living below your means is the most comfortable way to do things. And like we said, seek your history. One of my most favorite people in history is Muhammad Ali. And I know he didn't make this up, but he used to love to say, self-preservation is the first rule in nature. That's the way, yeah, that's the way he fought, and that's the way he ran his life to take care of himself. And I'm quite sure he ran his finances that way too. But you have got to take care of number one first before you are able to help anybody. Even the mama bird, when she leaves the nest, she eats, then she retrieves a worm and takes it back to her babies. So that's a great thought.
Yeah, and the last thing I want to hit, I guess, to kind of summarize this, going historically, I think one of the major historical debates after slavery, during the Reconstruction time period as we turned into the 20th century, was between W.E.B. Du Bois' camp and Booker T. Washington's camp, and it was about education. It was a debate about education and economics, and I'm explaining this in one of the simplest forms. What I will tell you is that we need to have economics to provide educators. We need to have educators to provide professionals, and they all work in concert with each other. One has no greater value than the other. They're not all equal, but neither one has more greater value than the other. I believe as a community we missed a opportunity then, because we do need doctors to help heal us and examine our conditions as we have health issues. We need lawyers and politicians to help protect our rights as we go forward. But we also need economic producing, uh, earning potential so that we can fuel the economy in America and our local economy and folks around us.
Absolutely, man. I was just reading an article the other day about discrimination in science. And I'm not the type of person to sit back and say, "Oh, you discriminating against me." I'm oppressed. I fight back and I try to make a way for myself regardless of what the odds are. But this is something that's very real. And you have to look at things in context. We said self-preservation is the first rule in nature. Okay, so if most scientists, and I'm not saying this is true, I'm just saying something arbitrarily. If most scientists are white, they're going to research things that benefit white people. I mean, this is just a reality. And it's a known fact that within science, as far as health goes, there's not a lot of research taking place for things that afflict blacks, like diabetes, sickle cell. The most is going towards other things. And can you blame them? You know what I mean? People take care of themselves first before they venture out to take care of anybody else. So we got to look at our kids and stop teaching them all to be athletes and basketball players and football players. We need some scientists too, so that we can have people within the field of science and medicine that have our interests in mind as they're carrying out research and fighting for funding.
Definitely, definitely. If we can go to the next slide,
Okay.
um, and so experience and exposure. Experience is a course to conviction. I believe conviction is important. When I'm talking about conviction, I'm talking about the earnest desire that if it's raining, snowing, sleet, I'm convinced that I'm going to pursue whatever it is that I'm pursuing. And ways that we build experiences through our jobs, through leadership opportunities, through events and different organizations. Uh, and family history. One of the things that I think when you look at um, family history, you can find out a lot about yourself. I'll give a case in point with my family history. So, my maternal side of the family, they picked sugar cane. That's what they did. They picked sugar cane. The last person to pick sugar cane on my maternal side of the family was my mama. So I'm one generation away from picking sugar cane. On my paternal side of the family, they picked cotton in Texas. I'm two generations from cotton pickers in Texas. Understanding that will help you kind of understand their worldview as well. So there are certain things that are passed down just based off of their experiences. And when you take their experiences, you have to, if they are alive, make sure you take advantage of the opportunity to discuss your family history, the good, the bad, and most importantly, the ugly. And the
Absolutely.
ugly that and the ugly that I like to talk about the most is anger. In my family, one of the biggest things that we have to deal with was anger. It's not popular to say, you know what, I'm from a family full of angry people. But
Absolutely, man.
until you acknowledge it and address it and do a full frontal attack on anger,
This is a very important topic because one thing that affects some people in my family is mental health, and a lot of us overlook things, and a lot of us like to dismiss, especially the things children say. Pay attention to these children when they're talking, and take the precaution and have them looked at sometimes, if they say something that's not consistent with reality, because I see people go for years and years and wonder why, cousin so and so or brother so and so within your family is not a productive member of society, and you'll dismiss him to be lazy, and not wanting to do anything. But the young man or woman can be struggling with mental disorder that has, obstructed his vision of life, his entire life, and nobody ever, took the time to get him seen about. That's something that we have to really pay attention to, as far as our family history goes. And just like you said, that anger, and despair, depression, and eating habits, all these things, play a significant role in how effective we are when we take to the world.
yeah, yeah, man, you hit it on the head. You hit it on the head. Like I would challenge everyone listening to this to really do sit down and have a discussion about what are some consistent positive things that your family does, and what are some things that as a family you really need to work on. Because I will tell you, man, it is a joy uh, to know that by the grace of God, I've overcame anger. It's a lot of people, they know me, they're like, man, you never seemed like an angry person to me before, but it was not always that way. Another part of experience is partnerships, investments, and projects. And when I talk about like partnership, investments, and projects, it's good to be a part of a team. It's good to be a part of something where you have to work with someone else and in a project where you get to see something start from the ground up. And as a mentor, a trick that I like to use is I will force somebody into a situation that forces them to learn something. If you see that the person that you're mentoring has a need that they don't recognize, instead of saying, you need to do this, you need to do that, expose them to an environment that's going to force them to gain that requisite experience that they need, that's going to help them move forward. And the last thing we'll talk about is the exposure. I call it the fuel for the imagination. I remember joining the Army, and I thought that you could go from private to general. I didn't know the difference between uh, uh, the enlisted ranks and the officer ranks. So I talk to people about that. They say it's a difference. I had no idea. So if you expose people to different things other than just, the basic, well, there's a garbage man, oh, there's the mayor. If you expose them to like who's making the computer games,
Absolutely.
who's making the computer, take them to museums, exhibits, historic cities. My niece and nephew, when they visit me, I always take them to the museum. They get upset. I don't care. I take them to the museum to expose them to that. And no matter like what socioeconomic space that you're holding, a platform, foreign countries is good. Some foreign countries you get to see them living the high life. You get to see, and in some foreign countries that each soldier can attest to, you get to see the low life.
Yeah.
Expose them to poor environments and all different types of environments.
Yeah, it facilitates critical thinking, to be exposed to other things than your everyday. I tell you, it really woke me up living in Europe those 3 years because all my life I've been told America's the greatest country, and we are a great country. But there's not very much of a leap between us and other countries as far as the measure of greatness because there are some people who have a lot of things right that we should take a look at you know. And that's a whole nother topic. I don't want to digress and prolong this thing. But
Yeah.
yeah, this is a very good discussion.
And lastly, multiple personal interactions. We everybody talks about the click, but we stay in clicks. Multiple personal interactions. One, okay, I was a project kid. I grew up downtown West Palm Beach. I grew up in the project, Polk and Bean City. I was a chorus kid. Why was I a chorus kid? Because I wanted to be one. I love music. It exposed me to things. I was able to go to Washington D.C., fly in a plane. The first time I flew in a plane, I was 18 years old, a high school senior. My family could never afford to put me on a plane. I got to fly on a plane because I was part of a vocal group. So you have to dare to be different. You have to dare to do some things different. I got a friend. His mother's from Argentina, and his father's from Spain. I named one of my sons after him, and his family would take me in. When you talk about somebody that was a poor kid, and the other kid was a person that had a lot more resources, but I built a friendship with this guy that's to this day. We're 20 years since, well, we're 24 years since we met. So you're gonna get an opportunity to meet some folks. Don't worry about it. You have to take the long bus ride to go to school. Take advantage of those opportunities, whether it be school, church, work, your place of worship, wherever you go. Mold, foster, develop relationships as you go forward. And
Awesome.
uh, and thanks again for having me.
Okay. Are there any questions outlying or within the session for Brother Jackson before I move on to the next presenter, or comments?
Negative, sir.
Okay. Okay. I'm gonna bring up your charts, Brother
All I
Marquis
need,
Jackson.
all I need is slide 5, sir.
Okay. 5.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
all.
Let me go ahead and bring you up here. Okay, let me move to 5. Here we are. Floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. I'm gonna start off and say that I'm Martise Jackson, U.S. soldier in Germany right now. Started my voyage as a minister just only 2 months ago. I did my first sermon, so I was able to spread the word of God. Also, with that being said, I'm from Albany, Georgia. I had a rough upbringing, because as the other brother Jackson said, that the environment we was in, and basically by that, my mother, I didn't have a father there, so she did everything to raise me. So I had that woman figure. So that's why a lot of things that us as men, we become emotional with things and stuff like that. But that's just a opening of my family stuff. But I want to start my slides off with talking about Willie Lynch letter that he wrote to the colony when he got to America. I want to go back to history to give us an understanding why we have the mindsets that we have now. So basically, I'm gonna start off with basically when he came to Virginia to Jamestown, and he talked to the colony of the 13 colonies. On the top of my list is age. The second is color or shade. There's intelligence, size, sex, plantation, status of plantations, attitudes of the owner, whether slave lives in the valley or on a hill, east, west, north, south. Have fine hair or coarse hair, or tall or short. Now that you have a list of differences that they have amongst each other, I should give you an outline of actions. But before I should assure you that this distrust that we will bestow on them and disrespect one another, the black slave, after receiving this indoctrination, should carry on well before self, and it should be refueled and self-generated for hundreds of years, maybe thousands of years. Do not forget, you may pitch the old man against the young man, the young woman against the old woman, the black male against the light-skinned male, the light-skinned brother against the dark-skinned brother. And all these tools, you would have them fighting amongst each other for the rest of their lives. So I'm gonna stop right there with this letter that he wrote. And he wrote this letter over 400 years ago. So basically, with this being said, a lot of us that have anger issues, mental health, and all these things that we have today comes from that stem of putting us in bondage. So we have to basically seek counsel, seek some people with positive thinking processes so we can come out of that, I can say, that negative thinking process, that crowd mentality that a lot of us have and stuff of that nature like that. So we have to keep that in mind. So basically, I named my title was Changing Your Mind from Willie Lynch Mindset. The first thing will be teaching the great things we have done. Basically, going back into our history, as a lot of us don't know because a lot of our history was lost by coming into slavery. But the thing about it was, not all black people were slaves at that point in time when they came to America. Because you also had another country that was thriving at the same time while they was building America was, and that was Spain. And Spain had black leaders who was also known as Shiites and Sunnis, the Islamic religion at that time. So basically by them coming over here, they had indigenous rights. So they cannot be mixed in with the slaves that they brought from Africa. And on that note right there, you have a lot of royal bloodlines that was mixed in with slavery. And if you go back and read your history, you'll see that these same people who came over here, they was called Moors or Negroes. But at the same time, they was not able to mingle with the slaves. That's why they do the whole trickology with the name African American, Moors, Negroes, because it divided us with that mindset of division. And like I said, that happened over 400 years, and we're still fighting amongst each other right now. And we still having mental health issues. We still having depression. We still having anger issues just because of all that they did to us in 400 years. So you have to get those things in your head so you know how to move forward. And as Brother Jackson was saying earlier, our values. We need a code of ethics and things of that nature. Our values should not be stop snitching. It should be positive mind thinking, positive mindsets, and positive attitude on things that we do. No matter whatever you do, you should be able to put something positive into anything, and it'll get you out of the gutter or get you out of the mind frame of thinking negative all the time. And I'm gonna move right on along to promoting the great things we have done. A lot of us don't even know what we have done as people or what our ancestors have done. And I'm gonna go back and talk about civil rights in the 60s in Albany, Georgia. A lot of people don't know that Martin Luther King is my third cousin. So by me saying that I have people in my family that have stood out and tried to do something with themselves, it gives me a warm feeling to make me want to become more educated, because as myself, I was a high school dropout. So they made me and forced me to get that desire to go back to school and to be somebody and be something to society. So that's another thing we have to do. We have to put those values in and start teaching our history and promoting, rewarding the men who are working. Everybody always want to be the Jay-Z. Everybody want to be that drug dealer. But who want to be that guy who get up at 4:30 in the morning to take care of his kids and take care of the kids that live in the community who don't have a father? So we have to start getting that mindset and start rewarding those guys who are taking on that role, not leaving their kids and leaving and finding another wife and starting a whole other family and leave that kid they have there. So we have to start rewarding those type of guys who are there all the time and who are always trying to be that positive role model for his kids and the kids that some of us have probably left. And showing not talking. That's the good game. We need to stop talking a good game and start being about a good game. Because I think a lot of times as men, we don't want nobody to embarrass us. We don't want to look like we're less than a man. So we'll talk a good game, but as soon as somebody question you or put you to that, what you said, you shy away or you find an argument, the same technique they have used with Willie Lynch ladder. So we need to change our mindset. So basically do less talking and doing more action and things like that. And it teaches that in the Bible, it teaches that in the organizations. Anywhere you go, any organization gonna say do less talking and do more work and more action. Basically going to my last key that I want to drive home is enforcing the great things we must do. We all know we're here for a purpose. We cannot say and be self-centered in ourselves that we don't have a bigger purpose for the whole mankind and the humanity of this world that we live in. It's just a bad thing that we got dealt a bad card, a bad hand in cards because we came into slavery. But when you read the Bible, we had them in slavery in Egypt times. So we have to keep that. If you know your history, you understand the whole cycle. We just repeat the same cycle that they did to us, and they're doing it back to us again. So the Bible is a good place to start if you want to. You can just find history books or go and see things of that nature too. So we have to get back and find out what our greatness is and enforce the greatness that we have in our community. And a lot of people say that we should not have like leaders in the community, but I think if you have a neighborhood, it should be somebody to have a hierarchy to organize your neighborhood and to basically have a system where everybody works together and stop trying to be individual. That's what had happened to us. We're trying to be individuals and we're not becoming as a community. That's why I say I wanted to join this mentor march of Black boys because it gives us a chance to think and to do things outside of what the norm you would do. Because you're exposed to brothers who have degrees, you have brothers who are good at tech, IT stuff, you have brothers that are good at preaching, you have brothers who are good at doing certain things. So basically you're able to bring that and brainstorm so we can build up our community. And basically have another thing to add on to the Willie Lynch thing and talking about drug dealers. Drug dealers to me is just like an overseer during slavery when they were selling our people and putting them on ships and sending them to America. That's what a drug dealer is to me. So if we start to paint that picture that a drug dealer, yes, he might do some good in the neighborhood, but how many people are he destroying? How many lives is he destroying by trying to get that dollar so he can have that car or that house? Yes, he probably feeding the neighborhood, buying turkeys and stuff like that, but we have to change that mindset of, okay, he's doing that, but what he's intentionally doing, really, he's killing his own people because he's selling to his own people. I bet you won't see a drug dealer going into somebody else's neighborhood selling drugs and killing their people. That just don't make sense to me. And basically, in the book of Job, I was talking about how the positive mindset, that's the whole purpose of that book in the Bible was, the book of Job was he was talking about leaving earthly things alone and basically having faith and having a positive mindset. It'll get you through anything in life if you have a positive mindset. But at the time when you put a mustard seed plant in your brain, you will start to fall to the wayside because you will get down on yourself. That's why you always have to keep that upbeat and always be around positive thinking and people so you can grow too at the same time. Basically, to my last thing I need to say is forcing our standards and laws. Most of the time, a lot of us don't even know that each state has its own constitution for each state. I know the United States have a constitution, but each state has its own constitution. And by saying that, if we know the laws of the federal and we know the laws of the state, we understand our rights and we're basically able to voice our opinion. You can't go by what he said, she said, but you know the true facts about the state that you're living in, the curfews that they may have, the rights that you get married, how long you might have to wait, or the things you might have in that nature. Basically, if I live with a woman for 2 weeks are we considered living together? Can I kick her out? It's things like that we don't know, and we just do things, and we find ourselves in trouble and stuff like that. So basically, being said, all this, I'm gonna reiterate, changing our minds from Willie Lynch mindset, because that's why we are still destroying our, how can I say, our culture, our nation, and our people as black people. Not to segregate or just say that black people are the only ones having this issue, but we have been the ones been highlighted in the news, in the media, and all over the world. If you talk to somebody from Japan who watched the movies, they always gonna say we're angry black people, pants sagging, hats to the back, and we're just aggressive people. But actuality, after talking to these two brothers, as Brother Jackson is talking, you wouldn't know that he had anger issues because he has worked on himself to get to this point. And that's why I say it's the it's the mindset that they paint on us and other people around us to make everybody think that we're just savages out of the jungle as they did from day one. If you watch Africa right now, Discovery Channel, you see people running around with no clothes on almost and making us like we are uneducated. But a lot of times we do that to ourselves. That's why being a mentor, you need to really get down into the source of the problem. Find out, like he said, you need to find out their family histories and find out the things that are going around so you know how to assist. If you don't know the whole story, you really cannot assist anybody. What you can only do is be a stumbling block. And with that being said, I'm going to leave this with everybody. In the book of Kings, before King David died, he told Solomon, he said, son, I'm going to give you a charge, and your charge is to do great things with your life. Not to be like me, because I couldn't even build a temple that the Lord has put here for us. And he said, don't be a womanizer like me, but you see what happened with that. But his dad gave him a charge to be a man. And we need to, as a community of black men, we need to give ourselves and everyone around us a charge to stand up and support one another so we can raise a next generation, because we have a big generation gap. A big generation gap with nobody doing anything. I say after Martin Luther King generation of civil rights, we have lost the positiveness that they were doing in the 60s to get us basically segregated schools and all those things of that nature. Because I can go back to Albany, Georgia. They probably got books from 20, 30 years ago still teaching. So we already behind the power curve of teaching. So with those things being said, I'm open to any question that anybody may have to go into the history of what I was talking about, Willie Lynch, basically teaching great things, promoting great things, and enforcing great things, because I'm a real big history buff.
No, this is awesome. And I'm glad you brought up this topic because there's a lot of things still going on to this day consistent with the Willie Lynch teachings. And the driving home, a lot of people, some people allow things to fly over their heads. I'm not insulting anybody's intelligence, but recall the word lynch. You know, that's the word used when you see back in the 60s a man or woman hung from a tree, you know, with their penis cut off and put in their mouth or tarred and feathered. You know, a lot of these things, the use of fear, separation, and turning individuals against one another based off of their individual unique qualities. You know, one's light skinned, one's fine haired, or one's dark skinned. You know, these are all consistent with the teachings of Willie Lynch, and it was all for the purpose of keeping us under control, dividing us so that we don't work together, because togetherness makes us effective. And you still see these things today. For instance, case in point, how many of you have seen on your timeline someone talking mess about Patti LaBelle's pies? You know, uh, why don't we support her? You know, we go out and buy other people's products and we don't say anything about it. Now, how many of you, I used to be one of the worst ones until I saw the effects. Back in grade school, remember the dozens, or we used to call it checking back in Savannah. We have this tendency to analyze other people and use our skill to judge and to talk about them. Well, look at your shoes, look at your hair, look at this. You know, these things stem from Willie Lynch teachings, to ridicule, to belittle, to laugh at someone and tear them down, as opposed to uplifting them and admiring their unique qualities and finding a way to use some of your skills to complement my skills so that we can accomplish a goal. You know, and these things, they go around nowadays. Okay, you see within neighborhoods, those of you that own homes, homeowners association. You know, me and my wife, we had this conversation. Wow, look at how clean this neighborhood we live in. Why can't our neighborhoods look this way? Well, the homeowners association is an association where people pool their money to pay for things like lawn service and parks and recreation, you know. And just because we don't own things, doesn't prevent us from having a neighborhood association, because our economic power, you'll hear that before we close out this thing. That's why you guys are just perfect. And I swear, this thing has to be ordained by God, because I only had maybe a 5 minute or 2 minute conversation with each of these guys before they put together their topics, and these things all marry together. So it says that our minds are in harmony, based off of something that's bigger than us. And economic power is something that we don't use enough within the black community. You know, I might have a couple dollars, you might have a couple, but if we put those together as opposed of going out on our own, we can do things to change our community. We can do things to help one another. So this is perfect. If anybody else has any comments or questions for Brother Martise Jackson before I move on to close out the session. Okay, I'm going to go back to my charts, and then I'll go ahead and get ready to close out. And we had some people in attendance on YouTube. I saw a couple things come across my timeline, and I thank you guys out there as well for the shares and the tweets, and ensuring that the word gets out on this thing. Present to everyone. Everyone sees my charts?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Speaking of economic power, I always try to, let everyone leave away from here with something that can be beneficial to yourself and also to the group. Signs and symbols of commitment. We wanted to come up with something that signifies that, we're committed to the black community and helping to turn some of the trends around, as far as the killing goes, as far as the poverty and, the despair and all of these other things we spoke about, as far as mental health and depression. So I came up with, my wife came up with a solution that, we can try to work towards. And it's a t-shirt, a Million Mentor Scholarship tee, and taking advantage of the power of e-commerce. And there's some information at the end of this about e-commerce for those of you who don't know it. But you all can go out and share with your friends this URL at the bottom, https://tchip.com, be one in a million mentors. And folks can go there and purchase one of these t-shirts. There's a one for males and two for females. It's a workout t-shirt or something to sport when you're around town. And these proceeds at the end of the year, or once they reach a reasonable monetary amount, will be given to some deserving child to help out with the costs associated with college, whether it be a bus ticket or whether it be a dormitory fee or books, anything to help, so that we're giving back something to the community. And it also gives our mentors a sign, to wear across their chest when they're out and about, that says, hey, I'm one in a million. You can approach me, and I'm willing to share my thoughts, my insights, my blueprint, how I became successful with you. And last week we had W.E.B. Du Bois as a featured quote, and this week we have Coretta Scott King, and it said, doesn't matter how strong your opinions are, if you don't use your power for positive change, you are indeed part of the problem. Many of us are guilty of saying, look at those niggers. Why they gotta act like that? Why they do this? Why don't they get educated? I'm not like that. I'm not this. I'm not that. Why do they have to be this way? Many of us say that, and we have an opinion, but we don't exercise our power in doing, just like Brother Martise said. Less talking and more doing. Don't criticize someone unless you're willing to help them. And Coretta Scott King, of all people, understood and knew and felt firsthand, being married to Dr. Martin Luther King, what it was like to live with a man who was opinionated, who didn't stop there. He took a step forward to do something about it and leading the charge in the civil rights movement. And so we want our people out there to step forward and be volunteer speakers. We want you to post your thoughts to our site. We want you to provide insight for the hopes of normalizing goodness, because so many kids are so accustomed to bad. They're so quick to squeeze the trigger and take a life, and so quick to call somebody boring or I don't even know these words because I don't care to learn them, but talk bad about someone who's getting up every day doing good for his community, but they'll jump on a bandwagon with a rapper or somebody who's doing absolutely nothing but taking money and spreading a horrible, a poor thought process. You know, shoot this person, kill that person, go to this trap. You know, but they don't support people who are trying to promote goodness, and we want to normalize goodness. And we want you guys to give your direct guidance and also indirect guidance through your actions and setting an example. And like I said, that economic power, you know, you guys have the power to contribute by going to the site and getting one of these t-shirts. And for our guest speakers from this week and also past, I want you guys to email me or inbox me your shirt size and your mailing address, and I'm going to send you one of these, you know, just as a token of appreciation for taking your time, lending your time to share your thought process with those out and abroad. And lastly, to close this thing out, I always throw up Malcolm X. I love what he says. Don't be in such a hurry to condemn a person because he doesn't know or doesn't do what you do or think as you think. There was a time when you didn't know what you knew. So we should all try to give back and be thankful of how far that we've come if you're in a position that you consider to be a place of success. And here's our links to our site and also recommended reading, something that you can use to help out your church organization, your lodge, whatever you're affiliated with, The Power of E-Commerce. You know, there's a lot to learn about it. So there's lectures on YouTube, and there's also the Class Central Foundation of E-Commerce where you can go and learn how to take advantage of these things to generate revenue. Because as Brother Jabari Jackson says, money does count. You know, that's some power that we can come together on and do things for our community to uplift one another. And without further ado, if there aren't any more questions for me, I'm going to take us off a live session and adjourn this thing. Any questions?
No, sir.
Alrighty. Thanks for attending. Let me go ahead and stop the broadcast.